All right, injuries for today. Armstead, foot and ankle, won't practice. Debo, hamstring, won't practice. Juice, finger, won't practice. Samson, Achilles, won't practice. Greenlaw, calf, no practice. Trent, just a vet day for him. Juwan Jennings, hamstring, won't practice. Barrett, knee, limited. Go ahead.
Brett, limited.
Yeah.
What's the plan for Brett? Is it just a chance to kind of ramp him up and see if he can contribute down the road?
Keep doing the same things we've done. We'll throw him in practice and just see how it goes.
How's Debo's hamstring been in the last couple? Is he making progress? Where is he?
Making progress.
What's realistic for Barrett? Post-bye, is that what the team is generally looking at for his return?
I mean, I'm not ruling out this week. Really just waiting to see how he practices and then go from there.
With you making a game plan with Christian McCaffrey now in the fold, was there a little bit extra excitement for you early in the week when you were formulating it? And what is it when you play the Rams? You seem to get the creative juices flowing a lot to outwit Sean and the Rams.
I mean, it's always, when you add someone like Christian, it's always a lot more fun. I don't see it much as creative juices versus the Rams. I mean, we don't change much. They don't change much. We do the same thing each time. They do too. Their scheme hasn't changed in a number of years, and neither has ours. You try your hardest to get good players the ball in space, and you see what they do with it. And it's a pretty simple game with both of us because we know each other well, and it usually comes into a physicality game and who turns the ball over the least and who makes one more play than the others.
How much do you look back at that game 2 weeks ago when the Rams played the Panthers to kind of see what they, how they accounted for Christian?
I mean, there's only been 2 games, so we watched those 2 games hard that they've played since us, but it's the same way they count for everybody. I mean, they have a scheme that hasn't changed, so you know what you're going to do. It's a very sound scheme with some good players, and they do a good job of mixing their coverages up, and it really never changes.
Defense is a pretty prideful group, and I'm sure they never expected to be have things handed to them the way they did the other day. What did you see on Monday, and what do you expect to see today from them?
Yeah, they're a prideful group. They're real disappointed. I mean, Monday's always emotional because you're not removed far from the game. But you got to review it. You got to go through all that hard stuff and can't sugarcoat it, which you don't have to. They kind of knew that before you get together. And then they come back today, and they're ready to go.
You guys have had some inconsistencies on offense. You also have a lot of new coaches on offense. Do you feel that's part of it, just a lot of new people working together for the first time?
I think going through a year when you have every single person on our offense is in a new position except our line coach. So I think you start out that way some. I mean, it's especially when you spend the whole offseason getting everyone ready for a plan, what we're going to do with Trey and things like that. Then you go a different direction by the first quarter of the second game. So everyone's up to date on stuff, but you realize it's your first time going through stuff with people. I mean, our first time playing the Rams, I felt like it was our millionth. But last time we put a game plan together, I realized, man, a lot of these guys haven't gone through this with us. So you have some of that stuff, but that's stuff you go throughout the year with, and you have that with players too.
Joe Staley was saying this week that to correct things, it has to come on the practice field. How important just generally is practice, and is it tough when you have a lot of guys that are consistently out of practice with injuries?
Yeah, I think that's the only place to correct things is the practice field. I mean, that's where you get better. That's where you do your work, and then you just let it unfold in the 3.5 hours when you're competing. That's a fine line. Everyone has that challenge in this league. You don't get much in the off season, and you want to be able to do it and improve throughout the year. But it's tough when guys go down. We haven't had a full week of practice in a number of weeks. Not by choice, just by some guys being down, and it'll be a little bit tough today. But that's why we're just trying to keep pushing guys to get back so you can practice more.
Kyle, for production in the second half has been an issue, particularly in the losses. Is there anything that you're identifying that is kind of a through line on all that, and what's your level of concern with that?
On offense or defense? No, I think it's different each week. I mean, you look last week, we scored on our first 2 drives coming out. Scored, I think, a field goal on the first drive, a touchdown on the second drive. I think the third play was a safety when we were backed up. Fourth series, I think we went 50 yards and had a fumble on second down. And then the last series we were in mop-up time. We did 2 minutes. I think we got down in the red zone and threw a pick. So, it's different. You got to execute stuff at no matter what time of the game. I think we punted once in the first half, none in the second. I think it was a number of days ago, but I don't look at it as to half. I look at it as some of the same issues in the first too.
Coach, the fans travel well, especially to Levi's, call it SoFi, or Levi's South How big is that to have the faithful there, and how can it kind of affect the game or kind of feel like a home game for you guys with all the red in the same weekend?
Oh, I mean, I talked about it last year being one of the coolest things I've seen in sports, and home field advantage is a big deal in the NFL because of crowd noise, and when you don't have to worry about that as much on the road, it's huge, and when you actually can get the crowd noise, it's doesn't happen very much, but it's a big deal.
Kyle, this may be oversimplified, but the defense was so dominant with the exception of the last two games. Can you put your finger on what it was that allowed both Atlanta and Kansas City to have such successful runs in the second half?
I think we went into the Atlanta game pretty banged up, but I don't think that's why it happened. I think they got a few first downs when we shouldn't have, kept them on the field, let them go a little bit longer. They made some points. They also returned a touchdown off one of our fumbles. In the second half, they controlled the ball well, but we gave up that first drive, and then we stopped them on their next 4 drives. So I get how dominant it was in the first 3 games or whatever that was. But I know we can play better than we have these last 2 weeks. And, we're missing some guys, which makes it tougher to be that dominant. But we also went against a pretty good team last week, too. So I think we can play a lot better. We can't hurt ourselves when we're down, which we have done. And we got to be able to weather that storm until we get some guys back.
Rams, much like your offense, have struggled to score points as well. What did you see in the Carolina game pre-bye from them?
Kind of the same issues. I mean, anytime you're missing most of your O-line, I think it's tough for them. So it's hard to get a running game going in that situation. So it just puts more pressure on everyone else, and it's similar issues.
Interception the other day, is the expectation that Jimmy would be able to avoid those types of plays at this point, and then what's the level of frustration that he's not?
That's an expectation for any quarterback in this league. That's why this league is very tough to play in as a quarterback. That's why there's not 32 of them. But always, the good quarterbacks, you want them to make plays. You want them to be able to let it rip. But sometimes when you have blitz issues and they're not there, the worst case scenario has got to be a sack and not a pick. And that's one I know we'd love to have back.
Kyle, with Armstead, it sounds like maybe perhaps he's had 3 different injuries, both feet and an ankle. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't ask as hard as you do. I don't ask as hard. I know it's foot, ankle. They blend together too. So, yeah.
Is right now, because you talked about flare-ups and everything, it sounds like, is what he's mainly dealing with plantar fascia?
I think it's a few things. That's why I don't think it's an easy, just give you a word or a timeline. I'm not hiding anything. You can ask him about it, but there's a lot of things into it.
On the interception, is it reasonable to expect Jimmy to see Jeff Wilson, or is that too far down in his progressions? Is the best case there a sack given what happened?
I don't want to go into all the schematics of it, but there's 2 play options on a play. Like to get to the better one. If you run out of time and you can't, it'd be great to fall into Jeff, but he was looking the other way and it wasn't there. And there was an unblocked guy in his face. So what's your choices? Throw it out of bounds if you can, or just sit there and take a sack.
Has part of the issue on defense the past couple of weeks been that players are playing that haven't been practicing throughout the week? Like they're not at their full capability?
Yeah, it's very hard to play in a game when you don't practice. It's also very hard when a number of guys aren't practicing, and the practice that you have is a walkthrough. So I don't really consider that practice either. That's what people deal with all around the league. So those are the decisions you got to make when you go into a game. If they didn't practice all week, can they get through the game healthy? And if they can get through the game healthy, is that a better option than what you have behind them?
Do you think, like this week, the whole playbook, or the whole game plan, I should say, will be open to Christian since he's here the whole week?
Yes. Yeah.
And how is there a challenge still in converting the language from Carolina to what your game plan lines out for him this week?
It's a real challenge for anybody, but you got to work at it. And he did that a lot in the 48 hours he was here to be a part of it last week, and I'm not worried about him doing it this week too.
Playing 85, 86% of their offensive snaps. Do you guys have a number? I mean, do you want it to be that high, or is that something that you're concerned about?
No, it's something that you feel out once you get to know people. You get to know your team, you get to know a player, you get to know his backups, you just get familiar with people. But I never go in with anybody I don't know and say, give an amount of numbers or stat or anything. I try to get to know the athlete and how they play throughout a game and how we use them and how you balance people out, and that's usually how we do it.
Last one,
probably aware, you guys rank in the top 5 in turnovers and penalties. I mean, as a coach, I'm sure you don't say, hey, stop committing penalties and turnovers. I mean, but how do you attack those areas, which can be pretty key?
I think when it comes to turnovers, I mean, that's one thing that I always try to stay balanced. I think when you get thrown too much, I think that tends to happen. I do think, I think that's what happened our last 2 turnovers. You get in one-dimensional when we're in those 2-minute drives, those last 2, and one ends up with a strip on the sack, and one a ball sails over in the last play for the pick in the end zone. So those are ones that you try to control. The one that we had earlier just can't happen. So you try to eliminate those way, like ones that you can't help, and ones that you can help. And then the penalties. You just got to deal with. But what we don't have to deal with is lining up off sides, false starts. Those are the big ones that bother me. Thanks, guys.